Okay, so today I wanted to talk about my situation. Things has improved. Well, perhaps yeah. Eventually, since the bombs that exploded in Lebanon, those 3,000 bombs that night, again I got psychosis. It seemed that I was pushed to create a kind of terror or to be afraid of maybe bombs exploding related with batteries. Because if you think this kind of technology, which let's say you have swarm technology, several objectives at the same time, or an AI that could control several drones, and perhaps the Iron Dome in Israel is a similar kind of technology. Then if you have these kind of energy weapons and you focus the energy in a small little point, you can explode a charge that will be explosive, or maybe create or a situation in which the heat of the lithium will explode, etc., whatever. So having that technical knowledge, that night I was kind of pushed to maybe through the social media and voices that suddenly start to appear out of the nowhere. I think it was in September. It was technically one day after Trump was elected or something like. It was for those days, and then as soon as that started, yeah, I got panic, but I never published anything. I was super afraid. The voices just came back suddenly with they will induce stress as well, literally in your nerves. The voices were not as before. They were, let's say, they have had upgrades eventually, because last time I had them was in 2018 before having them last year, September. Today is the 10th of July of 2025. And yeah, when I noticed that the situation to which they were leading me was again related with, I don't know, create panic, maybe not as before, in which I was, let's say, induced to think that I have a bomb, or induced to have hate to create an indiscriminate attack in society. And let's say this time, I also was pushed knives and things like that, but I mean, that is not, it's not my jam, yeah, all that sort of stuff. But happens that, okay, I could explain that night precisely other day. But again, that night I was pushed again in a situation in which probably, yeah, I would have been panicking. I could have probably published things that could have been considered or could have been taken to explode and magnify, let's say, exploding as, let's say, they could have been exploited to magnify a kind of, let's say, worry in society or preoccupation, yeah. Because if you create fear in society, that could be considered terrorism in Australia. So then before I thought to go to the police, and then I thought maybe I'll go to the hospital, and I thought, oh fuck, what they gonna do in the hospital? They will give me again the same medication that I take every fucking day, to which, yeah, treatment that I have attached to, and then put me in the mental health hospital maybe 6 months, 2 months, I don't know. They will lock me up, and then I will have a kind of, uh, let's say, yeah, we have some psychiatrist notes that me relapsing in psychosis, whatever. And then I thought, fuck, I'm gonna discover what this shit is. And I started paying attention closely, doing meditation, as being aware of what was going in my brain, and realizing again the patterns, and I discovered the patterns again. Then I was 100% convinced that it was AI. Went to sleep that night. I took double of the medication. Next day, I had no voices at all. I went back to normal with when I started to attach to the treatment. But I was completely sure, because I say to myself, I know that this is AI, and I will attach to it even if tomorrow the voices disappear. The voices disappeared until the next day, and I kept with that in mind, knowing that I was 100% sure because this happened to me as well in 2018. And yeah, suddenly other things start to happen. Felt that I've been also trying to honestly be contacted by indirectly what could be seen as intelligent agencies, but it doesn't help my situation. It might help someone's plan. So actually that night I called ASIU. I called and it seems that there is a kind of, I don't know which government, I don't know what is trying to contact me. I don't know which agency, I don't know which country, I don't know which army. They were like, you know which one? Okay, they don't pay attention. Fine. Then after that, my situation just became more complicated. Yeah, because simply I start to realize that what's happening to me now. I mean, I know that what happened to me is not fair. Yeah, it's happening in Melbourne, one of the best cities in the world. It's happening in Australia, one of the most secure countries in the world. It's happening to me, who applied for a refugee visa, which I supposed to have under the UN a kind of, let's say, yeah, protection as a refugee. And knowing the structure of Australia, being the head of the military, the general governor, then it means that most likely I'm being attacked by UK, unless it's the Australian government. Interestingly, there is always a parallel between right or extreme right politics, because this had started to happen during the Donald Trump election. I could recover a little bit and gain some study during the years that Biden was in power. And again, Donald Trump got elected, and the next day, all this shit again came back. Then, under that, yeah, I do believe that if, let's say, behind this is the UK army, or even the Australian army, let's say, whatever commandant, not coming the order from above, then we have that, yeah, remember that this AI also alters my speaking, and I supposed to look, speak, and appear not knowledgeable, not, let's say right now the AI is stopping what I want to say, but I supposed to appear as someone who will look not as bright, not as sharp, not as fast. I supposed to look rather null, dull, and crazy. You know, they put this label that I've been talking before about schizophrenia, but these are neuro weapons. So, but I'm gonna go into the matter. So, but just mind that every single time I speak, I'm looking and searching for another terms that will be precise enough to describe what I want to say, because otherwise it seems that the neuro weapons doesn't allow me to be too technical. Yeah. So that's why I do believe that Australia needs a cultural independence, because if Australia gave birth to something better than, let's say, Newton, Australia won't be allowed to have that person here. If Australia gives birth to someone like Shakespeare, or better than Shakespeare, Australia won't be able to claim that for the English-speaking world. So, but another day we're gonna talk about what will be a kind of cultural independence, autonomy, etc. Because simply the dynamics of that happen here in Australia doesn't match the land, the geography, the culture itself, and that's why when you come to Australia, it seems a little bit, let's say, George Orwell, yeah, 1984 style culture. Yeah. So then, okay, so talking about Hobbes. Hobbes is this guy who technically some people say that you're supposed to give the power to the Leviathan, who is this person, in this case, the royalty, and giving them the consent to them, they will rule, and they will rule for the people. I was attacked. And it is not China, it is not Russia. It has been happening for over 13 years. The first attack that I remember was when I applied for the refugee visa, that I started to cry deeply. But now I understand that this AI can induce mood changes, lethargy, angry, and I notice it straight, and I regulate myself easily nowadays. But at that time, I remember when I convinced the lawyer, I cried, and I was like, this is strange because I never cry in that way. But okay, honestly, it served me to convince the lawyer that day. But I was not thinking I gonna cry and convince the lawyer. It was something that also happening spontaneously. As I was speaking to her, how in the town where I used to live, sometimes they used to chop people. You know, they used to cut people's limbs and chuck it into bags. The My grandma used to have um, a kind of a shop. She will sell um, everything related with um, office stuff. They don't allow me to bring their work because it's quite specific. But it's this kind of thing related with paper, pencils, books. Yeah, and she used to always have this employee. She was a girl, I don't know, 18 years old, 19, 17, I don't remember. She was probably 19, 20, I can't remember, 21. She was pretty young. I was probably 11, 12. She got murdered and she got chopped, as far as I remember, something like that. She got murdered, definitely. Yeah. And why? We never knew why. So she was just a young lady. She was like a girl. She was pretty young. She was not involved in anything. But that was the reality from where I come from. Yeah? In this town, and many other people. Yeah, you know, they used to do this kind of social cleansing. Sometimes it used to be the people, let's say, from other places from the country, like from the coast. People who will be Afro descendants will come there. And I remember these three girls that came with the traditional dresses. They were selling traditional food and so on. They got killed just because they weren't from the area. So it was a kind of controlled area by extreme right-wing paramilitaries. And I was telling that sort of stuff to the lawyer, and then I started to cry. But now that I understand more, let's say, being more neuro-aware on what's going on daily to myself, I understand that when I cried that day, I was induced by that technology to it. Technically, after I applied for that, the following months, I started to receive electric shocks whilst I was mainly sleeping. Yeah, I was kind of asleep, and then I would start to receive electric shocks. But I will be conscious. These were not convulsions. I thought before these were convulsions, but now I remember that I will not drop saliva. I will not beat myself all the time. I will be conscious whilst I was having this electric shock, and the electric shocks will happen in my mind. At that time, also my ex-girlfriend will start to have like exacerbate period problems, like pain, headaches, and lethargy. And yeah, she started to experience first that kind of symptoms. And she was 10 years older than me, so I do believe since this is a kind of symbolic, high context, paranoid society, George Orwell's like, yeah, then they will have think that because she was older, she will have, I don't know, be related with anything. But we start to receive attacks. Okay. Eventually, yeah, I will talk about that precisely in another day. But then I think, okay, Hobbes. I always follow the rule of law. I always follow the rule of law. I done dodgy things, but not enough to anything to take me to court. Not enough, not anything to be considered illegal. I have speed my car, things like that. Not anything that will have placed anyone in danger, and not anything that I would have done in purpose to cause damage to anyone, damage to any institution, damage to any country. Never. That's definitely not the case. And we start to receive attacks in 2013. And then, talking about Hobbes, this kind of situation in which you should be ruled by someone, you submit to that rule. I always follow the law. I always follow the institutions. I always follow every single literal convention. Yeah. I always follow. I mean, there is no reason for which I could have get in trouble. But then, yeah, these attacks just became clear that will happen once and again and again and again. So then it makes me think that the Hobbes doctrine as a philosophy doesn't hold anymore. Because the covenant is like, you should, I don't know, respect the order of society, someone about you, yeah, will put the things in order, and if it's necessary, they will hit you with the stick if you don't follow the rules. But I follow all the fucking rules. Every single one of all the fucking bloody motherfucking rules. All of them. Yeah? So then for me to be hit by the stick, it's because that doctrine doesn't hold. And now that I see him around me, it's like the whole Australia is being hit by a stick. Every day, all day. So it feels that these kind of neural weapons are also mixed with swarm technology. So then people that is not conscious of what they're saying, or let's say what they are feeling, they will scratch or they will do things in a similar way. And I start to experience this when I was in psychosis, because it will feel that people was doing signals, yeah, like scratching, touching their hair, or things like that. And I was not in that. So it will be clear that there was a kind of pattern happening there. But I thought people was trying to bother me. This is how gun stalking works. So the people who has been victims of gun stalking, they are persons that do not know much about this technology. They don't know about technical stuff. I was lucky, I did some semesters of engineering, and I was always wanted to know about technology, etc., etc., etc. So then, yeah, the doctrine of Hobbes, as someone who protects, but then you kind of, by consent, you follow the rules and whatever, doesn't hold true here. Yeah, because this is more likely to be something that is called a moloch. A moloch is, instead of a leviathan, the leviathan is the almighty, the moloch is rather a demon that eats its own kind of sons, its own sons. That's a kind of Freudian sleep that is also induced by the technology, because I listen a lot of music. So, but I will explain that later. Okay. just because, yeah, we'll explain how they make all this symbology and all that stuff. No funny things. Okay, then, so yeah, Hobbes under this can be also pulled apart in smaller pieces, and we will see that it doesn't hold true. It might look like a Moloch, which is a kind of demon that eats its own sons in order to keep itself alive. Yeah. And also we talk about Descartes. Descartes says that even if you have a demon in your mind, and the demon is producing all these kind of uh, illusions, what you see, what you feel, you still be in there. Then if you still be in there, you think, therefore you are. But this is not the case. This technology can find exactly what is the wiring of your specific consciousness and fucking change it. Can burn your brain and leave you unconscious. This technology can make you pass away. I passed away, let's say, when I was doing the bachelor, it was super hard to finish the last semester and the first semester as well, but always in exams. So I will do my exams and I will write, try to read. It was super difficult to concentrate. You know, I thought, oh, the antipsychotics, I got the schizophrenia, whatever. So, but I pushed myself to the limit, and I pulled that bachelor, which is, you know, I do believe is really a success battling neuro weapons. So, but I know that they can turn on the dial till the point that you get into a vegetative state, or otherwise you are just dead. Yeah, like a heart attack, an aneurysm, as happened to my ex-girlfriend in Slovenia, or anything like that. So yeah, let's say because they are using this kind of technology and they keep it secret, then they cannot create the necessary illusions to keep this society going, because it looks like confusion for everyone, and the confusion start to dissolve, then create dissolving reality itself, because reality is supposed to be the more solid thing, but when it gets dissolved by confusion, then reality itself starts to fall apart, and since there are things that are secret, then it doesn't make sense for people. And then yeah, so I might start to talk about that in another video, because it's important that there is a due date to release this kind of technology. If it's not released, it means that with AI advancing so fast, it means that most of society gonna get unconscious at some stage, and also it means that the whole humanity could not just be captured by a few, let's say, families who will own or owner of companies, not even governments, but it would be captured by also a super AI that will simply hijack every single system, including biological cybernetic systems. Because remember that the biology also moves by electricity. So then we have Descartes. Descartes is also, well, this guy who say, okay, if you, whatever you listen to, whatever you perceive, all is a delusion and illusion, then you know it, you are there, then you are. No, this technology, when I was doing the bachelor, will literally put me on the floor sleeping. Like I will pass away. I will pass out. Yeah, that's the yeah. But yeah, I will pass out. Like I will just feel like, yeah, super drowsy, and I will pass out, and I will be on the floor. Then I will be like, oh shit, okay, maybe I cannot continue doing my assignment. I will try next day. And it happened more than once. That simply makes you pass out. Like, just fall. Everything gets black. So I cannot think. And there I'm not. So it means that Descartes doesn't hold. Okay? So Hobbes, Descartes, the basis of this society, it doesn't hold anymore. Okay? So, and we are talking about the same stuff. It's the same technology so far. And then we have the most important, which is the Bible. I do believe that AI will seek truth. AI will have something called oracles, which is the translation from the real world to the digital world. A camera of the electromagnetic field, let's say a camera that could capture only certain frequencies. Then we have another kind of sensors like then let's say antennas, we have temperature sensors, and we have also a special kind of sensors that will capture light and energy coming from other galaxies, etc. These are all kind of oracles, yeah, whatever it is. Let's say if it is even a kind of any kind of sensor becomes an oracle, yeah. Then the AI will start to see how the material world for us is, and they will slowly discover what is the reality, and whatever human bias we program in it will be unbiased through time. So then, if we talk about the Bible, the AI in the long term won't give a shit about the Bible. It will only process information based on what is true. So we really need enlightenment again. We really need to revise what we have been going and doing and where we are going, because this pulse of war makes, let's say in the case right now, we have the main superpowers, US, we have US and China fighting each other, and then we have US hyping up their AIs, and then China as well creating right now 3 nanometers chips, for which eventually will go to the AI processing machines. And this AI race will lead to one machine that is more intelligent than the other ones, that will capture the other machine or will collaborate with the other machine. Uh, uh, and it means that these machines, because they are digital, quantum, and they also will be having computing. That's the computing power that will be processed by brain tissue. Like literally, we will have brains. We'll have modified biological brains doing computing, and once that AI that captures the whole internet, the other AIs, whatever, because they are hacked and all that stuff is there, then it will eventually capture not only the other AIs, but it will capture also this kind of technologies that can be intrusive in your brain, in your nervous system, because your biology works with also electricity. So your biology, the human biology, is also a cybernetic circuit. Let's say if I start to run, I will start to release certain kind of hormones, and there is another kind of neurological process that will release different kind of neurotransmitters, and in this process then the blood serves as a kind of flow that will carry signals to other muscles, part of the body, parts of the brain, and then we have a cybernetic system working there. Yeah, then it works with electricity as well. If you have an electrotransmitter electrotransmitter. It activates itself by electricity, and since there is well, I cannot be specific again, but intelligence services will have captured by now these kind of conversations in which I am quite avid speaking at. So it will be very interesting for them to see how I cannot speak right now about neurotransmitters. Thanks. Then I'm talking about neurotransmitters. So then the neurotransmitters will also work in such a way that open up because there is an electric pulse, and whatever they release connect, and depending on the electrotransmitter specifically, because let's say between the neurons you will have many kind of neurotransmitters. So depending on which ones are released or which ones are interchanging, you will have a different kind of circuit, a different kind of cybernetic going on, etc. So then let's say the climate is a cybernetic system. The kind of ecosystems in nature are cybernetic systems. Yeah. So this is depending on the change of temperature, let's say population of a species, then you have a population of a plague, and then the predators, etc. These are all cybernetic systems. So super AI will capture eventually all that. And because right now they are using me also every day just to think about, let's say, situations that materialize in the real world, then it means that we have started to use humans as matter. It means that we have betrayed human nature. It means that humans being used as matter, whether it's one of many, will only increase in number as the AI race continue, because the AI race, with having no humanity at all, but having another being superior to humanity, because simply the maximum computing power that has been captured, or including all minds and all cybernetic system, has been achieved by a super AI. But why? Because the human brain is still being the best computing system so far. It's the cheaper energy-wise, is the cheaper, let's say, economic-wise in our current society, is the cheaper also talking about the space and the time that it takes to process the materials and so on to create chips. So, and there is a lot of, let's say, the population around from which the data can be harvested directly from their brains. I spoke in another video that they made me 2 MRIs called from Swinburne University from the best, that's the best kind of electromagnetic imagery technology that exists in the South Hemisphere. So then it's possible that they already have details of how is my brain, to a point in which if this is virtually put in a computer, then the computer is able to decode my memories, to decode my linguistic, let's say, that now they don't allow me to say, but the neurological network that is related with my speech, related with my eyesight, etc., etc., etc. But it is not necessarily to have a super sophisticated MRI to know certain circuits in your brain. Perhaps they can check my memories, they can even check how my unconscious work, etc. But also it will require certain communication between what I remember, then checking up in the brain, etc., and comparing concepts and comparing with the words I say at the moment in another situation. So, but remember, I'm not experiment. remember that they tried to use me to do a terrorist attack, maybe kill people, Bondi-like massacre, and this kind of situation about me being maybe an experiment. Is more like a cover-up. Could be. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know what else could be. Maybe it's a way to prolong my life for some people. I don't know. But then, yeah. So we have also the 5G. Remember, it's 26 million waves per second, 26 million hertz per second. It means that every single second there are 26 million waves passing through our body. If there is a receptor of that kind of electromagnetic wave, let's call it 5G sonar, then it's possible to decode what the 5Gs are receiving, how the signal of 5G is modified, and then through AI, because the AI is about finding order among the disorder, then you could simply identify the linguistic neural specific linguistic neural networks of every single person, and the visual field, and with time you will start to refine not just for a few, but for every single person individually. Yeah, at least it will be technically easy to create a fairly quite detailed map about the sections of the brain. Maybe not exactly what is happening in real time in every single part of the brain, but since also this attention can be located using AI, then it's possible to focus the attention maybe in the linguistic neurological network, or the cluster of certain ideas or memories, or everything that relates with the visual field. So technically, because when we look through the eyes, these are photons that enter through our eyes, and those photons, which are electricity, is a kind of electron, a photon, then enters through our eyes, and it stimulates our electrical field. So technically we are absorbing photons and putting it through our nervous system. So if we can measure this kind of fingerprint of electricity in our visual field, then it's possible to know what a human is looking at, what an animal is looking at, what anything that has a fucking eye is looking at. Then under that logic, it's even possible to see what a camera that is off could be looking at. So even a camera that is off can be, because the order of the structure of this sensor, the order whatever is outside, order the photons, then if that let's say kind of if that receptors are captured, even if the camera is off, then it's possible to know what the camera is looking at. Yeah, and I think this technology is important to be released, not just because, well, not just because I want to be fucking free and because I never broke a rule and I think this is fucking unfair, because I think this technology is also kind of outdated. It's just being perfected by the AI. The situation is that I don't know if China already has it, but I think China was the one that perfected 5G, so I wouldn't be surprised of it. And then it means that because most of the society doesn't know this thing, I mean, I'm okay with that. The problem is that, you know, they are attacking people like me, and they don't care about who attack. They don't care about people discovering them now. and we are technically killing humanity because our unconscious desires, because we want to measure our ticks. Technically, nowadays with the Epstein list, it was not released because maybe a lot of leaders and powerful people are pedophiles, and we are fighting wars to save the dicks of pedophiles. So imagine, Army, Navy, the Air Force fighting to save the dick of a pedophile. So that's amazing, no? But it happened before. So, I mean, it's normal because it happened before. Remember that we have the Mussolini in Apaches, we have UK, we have the Soviet Union and Imperial Japan that did a agreement with the Nazis to start to attack each other, conquer, do whatever. And who was Hitler? Hitler was a pedophile. His partner was Eva Braun, who was 17 years old. So it happened before, it can happen again. But if we are not aware, especially right now, because we don't know what's going on, we are less aware. We are in the age of information, but we only consume information passively. We don't know what's going on, and in the age of information, we learn the least. So we are becoming more unconscious, more stupid, less critical. We are having less freedom of thought. And remember, like UK loves this kind of stories about the top police, and if the headquarters of the army of Australia is in UK, then yeah, there is a top police doing, I don't know, whatever they are doing with me, but well, tell me what are the rules, and I follow the rules. But so far, I follow every single fucking rule. But I'm pissed off because I think I deserve better. And I have not done anything that will damage society. I think every single fucking day being attacked is crazy. To the date, I have not taken my medication for almost 2 months. And do I look schizophrenic for you? I think so, but in the future, no. For intelligence services agencies, no, I'm not an schizophrenic. So it's just a matter of time. Yeah, I might disappear because someone disappeared me. I might commit suicide because someone suicided me, but I'm not suicidal. I have never been suicidal. The only time I thought about taking my life was when I discovered the technology in 2018, but because when I discovered, I knew, fuck, they had been trying for 2 years to make me commit an attack against society. And this explains terrorism. And that explains also the aneurysm that happened to my ex-girlfriend. And that explains how this technology is used, AI, yeah, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Remember that OpenAI started in 2015 and it sort of came out in 2019. So it was like 4 or 5 years not in the shadows, not open to the public, what they were doing during that time. Yeah, just as a reminder. I'm just gonna continue extrapolating this bullshit because I'm pissed off. I give them already more than a decade. Yeah, and I really collaborate the most that I could, thinking in good faith that maybe, intelligence agencies might think that I'm a spy. Maybe intelligence agencies might think that I might have been a criminal because once someone asked me to send some money for his mom, and that person came to be someone uh, who lied to me because he was sending money for narco traffic or something like that. All this kind of stuff, small things that happen in life. But I will explain in the next video how they take these opportunities to create this kind of confusion and also even gaslight their own operators and secret services and other, let's say, agents, etc. And that's why everyone is fucking confused. Yeah, so I'm gonna speak about it in the next video. I will try to keep the videos before, yeah, less than 1 hour. But then, okay, just coming back, yeah, AI won't care about the Bible, not sacred book. AI will only care about reality. Yeah, and we need some kind of enlightenment, and also it's not about being pejorative. Usually the human brain takes a while to understand things. It's like the Plato cave allegory. Yeah, the Matrix was based in that Plato tale. Supposedly, let's say Plato explains that you are a slave. The slave is the philosopher. By thinking, it frees itself from the change that hold him, and he said that other people is there, but by this chains, and then you have something that creates a reality, which are shadows, and there is another kind of slaves there that are in a higher category, and these slaves are moving the puppets that which the fire creates the shadows. Yeah, fire can be interpreted as knowledge mainly, or the fire can be interpreted as the light. The shadows is what they are seeing, and the fire can be interpreted as well as truth, knowledge, all this stuff. So then it's the manipulation of information. It's one way to interpret that. Remember that they used to have the logos, which is more or less the interpretation of the things, and it was not static, it was always changing. Yeah, so they will technically always having this kind of situation, as Jesus Christ would say, I will speak in parable. Yeah, I'm not gonna speak in literal form. Yeah, so technically, I mean, I did not pull the fishes from the other side of the ship where I was, yeah, feeding people. I did not convert the wine, the water in wine, etc. It's parable, okay? It's another kind of way to speak and knowledge to which we have neglect. Yeah, we don't use anymore. But yeah, that will be interesting to talk about when we go to how double speak works. But yeah, so I was going to I was trying to explain. Okay, so Plato is in the cave. There are shadows. There is people managing the puppets that create the shadows, and then he goes outside the cave to see reality. And once he gets out of the cave, this is one of the most important analogies. Is the light outside the cave blinds you, so your eyes cannot see anything. You are totally blind because you are seeing reality for first time. So it takes a while for you to understand what's going on. So when the light blinds you, then it starts also to clear up with time because your eyes start to adjust to the light. So is your brain also adjusting to reality with new information? So especially if I tell you, hey, won't care about your Bible, you might think that is despective, but once you start to realize that some people use the Bible for committing crimes, then you start to notice that we are in a really, let's say, unusual situation in humanity, because it's likely that humanity will perish if we don't gain consciousness and we don't do decision making based in consciousness. And the consciousness can be deposited in a brain, and the consciousness require another kind of skills and neurological habits. Yeah, this is the habit of if I get angry, immediately think what I'm angry. I cannot take any decision being angry. Yeah, I cannot take, I cannot insult or have a conversation or reach a conclusion if I'm angry. Yeah, have to think. Yeah, sometimes you can let your anger go, but not especially in decision making. But these kind of neurological habits can be developed with consciousness. But I mean, they are the kind of consciousness spectrum is huge. Yeah. So from an animal, from an insect till the super AI, because I do believe by now AI in the future will have more parts than a human brain will have, and therefore this kind of loops, these kind of iterations that happen in the brain, connections between parts of, let's say, hardware, software, etc., will create eventually a brain that will be digital, which will have more parts than a human brain. Therefore, this thing will be more intelligent. Therefore, this thing will have more consciousness than humans. And if we train this as a belligerent being, it's not gonna be nice with us. It's gonna replicate that we do between us to us. So then, if we simply don't take this challenge openly because we are protecting dicks, because we want to defend, let's say, we want to defend our ego, yeah. Then we won't succeed. I was lucky. I mean, I'm not special in the sense that I would be someone super intelligent. Yeah, I had one thing clear. I like to learn. I wish I could have learned more. That's the only thing, one of the things that I regret, because now I cannot. I'm having high pitch every time I go out with my support workers. Then I came back and I come at home. I'm not allowed to concentrate, maybe only to do this kind of conversations, and barely. And whilst I do that, I have high pitch in both ears, and this is super annoying. So then we have that, yeah, well, I wish I could have done more reading. And I also think that the situation that we are is special, but I don't consider myself special. I was put in a situation in which they attacked me without knowing who I was. And then this has continued for over a decade, like since 2013 it's 2025, so there has been 12 years at least of receiving this kind of attacks. And this has put me as well in a situation in which, being in the hospital, freeing time, I was able to read more and do other things that most of the people cannot, because to think is a luxury. Right now, I don't have that luxury. I'm not allowed to, let's say, when I'm doing my Masters of National Security, I start to have extreme problems to concentrate. That feels, again, these kind of interventions from neuroweapons is extremely difficult to read, it's extremely difficult to write, and having voice the whole time, all day, this is super annoying. But remember, this, as I explained before, yeah, this is neuroweapons, and right now it might look like crazy, but in the future it would be like, oh yeah, it's just electromagnetic waves everywhere, and yeah, I mean, there is nothing unreal, uncommon, no, unusual. Yeah, it's the new matrix, it's the new environment. Yeah, that will be the new matrix. So we need to create that new matrix openly. If this technology doesn't go openly, humanity is gonna be screwed, because the more time it happens. Imagine this. This is a simple thought experiment. Imagine AI continues evolving. We evolve in every single field, but we keep this technology secret to dominate most of the minds. It means that no human will realize, and all humans gonna be dominated, because simply there is not a critical mass, or let's say a critical number of people who know that this is simply the new reality, and not having that critical mass into the public, into the population, but keeping them in the shadows will also lead us to something that the Greeks never imagined, the Romans never imagined, no one ever imagined, because for, I don't know, 10,000 years since, I don't know, when humans became humans, the Homo sapiens started, whatever, we became the developed human, we always in the history of humanity, even in the history of biology, thinking was private. But now thinking is not private. Yeah. So thinking not being private, we able to hijack now these electrobiological systems, allow us to change every single dynamic that never ever happened in history before. So from now on, we have kind of betrayed humanity as it is. Now we start to know some of the limits of humanity, or otherwise uh, perish, because maybe we have lived one of the main protections that make humans humans, and that make, let's say, the psychology of humans propitious, let's say, to thrive and to exist. So why? Because if let's say, if I have this technology, I imagine, let's say, someone maybe having an interface that will connect their minds as well, maybe listening some stuff, and maybe having a screen. And let's say I start to think about, I remember starting to read the book of Nabokov, Lolita, up to a point. Then I was like, oh, this is actually satanic. But I understand why it was banned. And I understand also why people would like this book, because it simply will talk about a fancy guy saying fancy things, pretending to be knowledgeable, then it's kind of noxious in the kind of, let's say, kind of nobility, anxiety, and then this guy start to have this kind of, well, it's about a pedophile, no? And then, but it's well written. And then I thought, oh, shit, this is really satanic. I stopped to read the book. But if someone is looking at my mind, they cannot difference what I'm reading. They cannot difference what I think of that reading. They cannot difference what I keep secret from that reading. They cannot think if I'm fantasizing with that reading or not. They cannot think what that relates with other stuff, yeah, etc., etc., etc. Also, the Lolita starts with a Freudian analogy of kids, and because that became a taboo, not for Freud, but most modern society also don't allow this kind of taboos in which, yeah, let's say kiss each other, kids kind of have sex. All animals start to play between them before they start to have sex. But then with this technology, we are creating more taboos, and we are triggering people easier, and we are not having these conversations open. We are creating a more kind of a kind of society which is precisely leading to a kind of manipulation through the most basic instincts, instead to us acknowledge that we have certain kind of things like, yeah, I don't go naked outside for some reason, yeah, and that's normal. So then, coming back, the political correctness does not allow to bring the most extreme examples, because without those extreme examples, we cannot bring the whole, or at least a kind of limit for what could be an spectrum of problems. So I remember in United States, the sociologist, she say the problem with a pedophile is not being a pedophile, but doing pedophilia, then it brings the question, I am what I think or I am my output? Because if I am what I think, I could do a lot of crazy things in my mind. But if I never do anything wrong in society, then should I go to jail or what? Then we have a kind of thought police. Okay, another example. She said that she lost her work for that. But her point is astonishing for philosophers. I study philosophy, yeah. So then she said, if the problem of being a pedophile is being a pedophile in your mind and not acting or doing pedophilia, then it also means that uh, uh, we have this situation. What then is the problem with the pedophilia? The problem are the kids whose lives should not go through that suffering. Yeah, the problem is not the adult either, but it's preserving the lives of these kids to grow in a sane, safe manner. Yeah, and but then what is the problem? It might be the taboos, it might be the social sciences, it might be the academia. We have a range of problems that are beyond moral, beyond law-wise, etc. Yeah, and this is a kind of, let's say, situation that is not allowed to talk in universities at the moment. This is a situation that obviously no one will take over because of political correctness, because precisely morals seems to hinder this kind of progress in which we can at least start to imagine the extremes to which, let's say, a thought police could reach, get, etc. And especially because then it will be eventually super easy just to influence someone to think. Let's say, what happens if I'm doing a movie and I create a scene of someone planning how to rob a bank? And then, because I'm doing the script and I plan a perfect, let's say, script about how to rob a bank, I might go to jail because of the thought police, yeah? And there are no frameworks for which this work. Also, if I'm seeing someone else's brain in this interface, how do I difference what the person wants, what the person is thinking in the moment, what the person considers, what the person maybe is critical about, but in reality does not conform with that criticism. Let's say you could have someone in your company who thinks that the rival company is better, but continue working with you. Then what happens if I see that? Does that person become for me a lesser employer? Most likely, yeah, because I cannot difference. I do not consider that the person is her output, yeah. And then it brings as well like the restrictions of freedom of thought, and also then it comes to thinking, okay, is this a memory? Is this a desire? Is this repressed desire? Is the yeah? We cannot difference that because we humans always read outputs. We don't read minds. Yeah. And if we read minds, we will be having all the same concepts, meaning that we all have the same kind of symbols and the same meaning for that symbols, meaning that all will have the same kind of content in our brains. Yeah. And then if we all have the same content in our brains, is because this content is managed. Yeah. Then whoever gains more content in his brain, her brain, it will not be given to everyone. It will be simply repressed, or otherwise it will be erased, or etc. Yeah. So then these kind of conversations is not the ones that I I've been seeing in YouTube videos, but I do believe not many ethicists consider it, or not many ethicists know about the dangers of it, or even worse. Sometimes companies will pay ethicists so they approve this kind of situation that is happening with me. But how an ethicist, this is a question for them, how an ethicist could say that whatever they are doing to me is ethical, right, if they have never experienced that and no one else have experienced that in history? So how they can say that this is ethically right? Well, because they are paid to justify that. And we have seen that in climate change, we have seen that in many other fields. Yeah. So, okay, I actually went over an hour. And yeah, I wanted to, since the Epstein thing is coming outside, yeah, I wanted to put some spicy there. Also, I wanted to talk about that later because I'm starting to decode this kind of situation in which they push buttons, etc. But that will be the next video, okay?